Today I'm working with NIK Collection 5, the all-new update. The title of this episode is Working with Presets and Meta Presets. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you for joining me today. Now that the new NIK Collection 5 is out, I wanted to show you some of the features dealing with the presets and the meta presets and the NIK Selective tool. Now to find the NIK Selective tool, what you'll do is you'll come up here to File and then come down to Automate and look for NIK Selective Tool 2. Click on that, the Selective tool comes up. You can also launch the NIK Collection by opening up Photoshop's filter menu and come down to the NIK Collection and launch it here. But I think it's more beneficial to work from the Selective tool because this is where you can launch any of your filters. But if you'll notice, if we come to Color Effects Pro 5 and if I open it up by clicking on this triangle right here, you'll notice inside of here we have filters and presets in a list here. Now anytime you favorite a filter or a preset, it'll show up in your list and you can launch it right from here. And I'll even show you a way where you can add a filter or a preset and you don't even have to go into the NIK Collection. I'll show you that coming up here shortly. But you can also apply last edits if you just made an edit on an image and then you open up another image and you say, I want to use that same effect on this image. You can just click on last edit and it will automatically do that. And again, you can launch NIK to do that, or you can just apply it right in Photoshop without even going out of Photoshop. But that's one of the things you can do. Another thing you can do here is you can come down to Meta Presets, and if you open up Meta Presets, you'll see you have a bunch of different Meta Presets, and these are basically actions that NIK has made for us. And if you click on these question marks, it'll tell you what this particular action will do. It'll apply a couple different filters here. And you can do this again just right inside of Photoshop without ever leaving it. Or you could go into the NIK Collection and then you can alter the filters and do things that you want as well. So the NIK Selective tool, it's really a great way of working when you want to work with the NIK Collection in Photoshop. Now here's another nice feature of the NIK Selective tool. You see this question mark here? If you click on it, it'll open up your web browser and take you right to the user guide showing you about the NIK Selective tool. And from here, you can get to all different parts of the user's guide here. Like you can go to the different filters and open things up here, but you'll be able to dig into all this information about the NIK Selective tool and find out actually what all it can do for you. So don't forget about this question mark. It'll take you to that user's guide, which is very important, especially if you can't remember something about a certain filter or whatever, or the Selective tool. Very helpful resource for you. And then we have this gear icon. I'm going to click on it, and this is where you make all your different setting adjustments. Now there's some very helpful things here, so pay attention. Now the first thing, if you don't want the NIK Selective tool opening up on launch, just uncheck this box right here, because sometimes I don't use the NIK Collection, so I don't want it always opening up for me. So it'll open up every time I open up Photoshop, and if I don't want that, I just uncheck this here. But if you want it to always open up for you because you use it all the time in Photoshop, then have this checked on, and that way it'll open the NIK Selective tool automatically on every launch. So you could just check that or uncheck it, whichever you prefer. Now let's take a look at some of these other settings we can make. Apply Filter to. Now you have a drop down here. You can apply it as an image composite, and I'll show you what that is in a sec, or you can apply it as an active layer. Okay, let's first examine image composite. So let me click OK. What I want to do is add, like, say, an adjustment layer to this image. For instance, let me add a curves adjustment layer and maybe add a increased contrast, like an increased contrast preset, and maybe I'll pull the opacity down on that to maybe right around there. Here's the before and here's the after. Let me shut off the properties here. So if I go back here to the gear icon, apply filter to image composite. So what that basically means is if I go ahead and launch a filter like Color Effects Pro 5, it will make a composite layer above here. In other words, it'll pull this all together just as if I stamped the image and pulled everything all together. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and click Color Effects Pro 5. It'll launch Color Effects Pro 5, and I'll just add a quick adjustment to it. Like let's add a detail extractor to this, and I'll pull the opacity back. I'm not going to make an adjustment here. I just want to show you how this works, and we'll click apply. And that sends us back to Photoshop. But you'll notice here, now we have this composited layer. It built this for us, right? Because originally I didn't have this layer, but when I clicked on Color Efex Pro 5, it went into Color Efex, but it built this composite layer. Now here is the before and here's the after. So that's what that does. Now let me go ahead and delete this. Now I'll click on our settings icon again, and now I'm going to change this from image composite to active layer just to show you what happens now, and I'll click OK. So right now it's set for active layer. So if I try to launch any one of these filters here, but let's do Color Efex Pro 5 again. I'll try to launch it by clicking on it, and notice what happens. I get this prompt. The command Color Efex Pro 5 is not currently available. Well, that's interesting, right? Well, let's just click OK. Well, the reason it didn't work is because these filters will only work with an active pixel layer. You have to have pixels. Like an adjustment layer is not a pixel layer, okay? So let's go back to the gear icon, and when I set it to image composite and click OK, now when I go to launch the filter, it will launch because it'll build a composited image. In other words, it'll stamp that layer for us. So that's really good. And that's really the way I like to work with the NIK collection. I like to work with it with this particular setting, image composite. It's very handy. But if you have yours set to active layer, what you need to do is you'd have to stamp your layer together. And to do that, there's a shortcut. It's Shift, Option, Command, E. That's on a Mac, or it's Shift, Option, or Alt, Control E on a PC to merge the layers together. Then at that point, if you went ahead and launched Color Efex Pro 5 or any of the filters, it'll go ahead and you won't get that error message, and it'll go ahead and launch it. Okay, so that's very important. I'm just going to cancel out of here for now. But for me, a real time saver is just to go into settings and change this to image composite and click OK, and then you won't have to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this layer and also this layer as well, because I really don't need them. Now stick with me, because I think it's important that we cover these subjects here. I want to cover the selective tool first, and then we'll get into presets. But let's go back into settings here, and let's see what this apply brush effect is all about. Now I really don't use this feature because I use masking in Photoshop. And this works with Photoshop masking, but to me it's much easier to work just with Photoshop masking. But that's just my take on it. Now this can be a little confusing. Right now you'll notice I have apply filter to image composite. So whenever I run a filter, it's going to go ahead and make a new layer of a composited image. In other words, whatever effects I have on my image, that will all go into one pixel layer of a composited image, okay? But now the apply brush effect will merge to current layer, or if I hit the drop down, it'll also apply it to a separate layer. But let's talk about this first, merge to a current layer. So if I go ahead and click OK, so here's what's going to happen. Let's launch Color Efex Pro 5 again. So let's launch it, and let's add a filter. Let me click on favorites, and I like this. If you click on favorites, all your favorite filters will come up here, and they have stars, and you can see that. And one of my favorites is Glamour Glow. So let's click on the plus here and add Glamour Glow to this. And let's really add a lot of it here. Just like this, okay? And let's click. Instead of apply, you'll notice we have down here, we can either cancel, we can click on brush, or apply. Now, remember, we're dealing with brush. So let me click on brush. And now we're sent back into Photoshop. Now this is the NIK Selective tool, but it's changed for us. Now it says brush tool, and we have some different options here that we can work with. And you can see my brush tool here, right? Now if we look over at our layer stack over here, you notice we have a black mask, and a black mask means it's hiding this adjustment, okay? But we have a brush tool, so I could come here, and right now I have 100% opacity, 100% flow. I can paint Glamour Glow over anything that I want to, just brush it on. And now you can see where I painted on my mask here, right? Or I can click erase, and I can erase it from the mask. And now it turns black where I've erased it, okay? Or I could click fill, and when I click fill, it fills it with white. And now Glamour Glow is applied to everything, right? Now if I click on the erase tool again, I can erase that from certain areas, okay? So I can erase the Glamour Glow from certain areas if I want to. And then the other thing we have is a trash can. So if I click on the trash can, it eliminates Glamour Glow altogether. Now, whenever you're done with any of these brushings or erasings or fillings or trashing, you need to apply what you did. Now, when I click apply, notice what happens to this entire layer here. Remember, the last thing I used was a trash can. I'll click apply, and it just totally deletes that layer because remember, I clicked that trash can, and I told it to delete Glamour Glow, and now the layer is gone. It's deleted. Okay, so now I'm still working with the settings here, okay? Now, right now, I added a layer. It's just an Analog Effects Pro 3 layer, just with a random adjustment on it, okay? And it's right here. Now, that's a pixel layer. Now, right now, under filters, I have applied to image composite. So that means if I would run a filter right now, it would actually duplicate this layer, right? It would put a stamp layer right above it. But what if I wanted to apply a brush effect to the current layer? Now, let me show you what I mean. So apply filter to, let's change this to active layer. So the filter will be applied to this active pixel layer. And then if I have apply brush effect, now remember I can merge it to this current layer, which is right here, or I could apply it to a separate layer. But let's see what happens if I apply it to the current layer. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and add Color Effects Pro 5 to this Analog Effects Pro 3 layer, but right now it's not active. I need to make it active, so I'm going to click on it. That makes it active. Now let's run Color Effects Pro 5 by clicking on it right here. And now let's just apply a random filter to it. How about Detail Extractor? So let's add some Detail Extractor. I'm going to pull up the Detail Extractor way to the right to really add tons of detail. Now I know it looks ugly, but bear with me here, okay? I'm just trying to teach you how this brush tool works. So let's click on not apply, but we want to brush, right? Because we're working with the brush effect. So let's click on brush. And that'll send us back into Photoshop. Now we have the NIK Collection Selective tool here, but now it says brush tool, and now we're set to brush the adjustment in. But I want you to notice something with our layers. It seems like we have an extra layer here. Now, why do we have that layer here? You'll see why in a second here, because remember, I wanted to apply it to this layer here, but it put a layer above it. That's not right, but it will turn out right in a sec. But let me just go ahead and brush in this effect. I have the brush tool with 100% opacity, and let me just paint in some of the detail on certain areas, like right here. And you can see my mask, and you can see I added detail there, right? Okay, but now if I click apply, watch what happens to these layers over here. I'm going to click apply. See, it merged it down because remember, if we go to settings here, I had it set for the active layer and also to merge it to the current layer, which is exactly what it did, okay? So that's what happened there. So that's how that works, and I know that can be confusing, and that's why I'm explaining this to you. I took this extra time to do it. Now let me go ahead and delete this layer, and now I want to show you the last thing over here, and that is apply in NIK Collection. Apply favorite filters, presets, and last edit. You can apply it in the NIK Collection or you could apply it in Photoshop. And this is a really nice feature, especially when working with presets, which we're going to start working with next. Now, as you'll recall, I said I don't really like working with the brush tool, so I'm going to set this up the way I like it. Apply filter to, I'm going to set it to image composite. That way, whenever I add a filter, it will make a new pixel layer for me of the composited image, which is the way I like to work, especially if I'm using a bunch of adjustment layers. I don't have to stamp everything together, which is a good thing. Now, apply brush effect. I don't really care here because I'm not really going to use it. So I'm just going to set it up to apply to the current layer, but that won't really matter because I'm not going to be using the brush tool. But now I want to show you this section here again. Right now, applying NIK Collection just means it'll open up the NIK filter and apply it. And if I have it on apply in Photoshop, then it will work just in Photoshop. It won't even launch NIK. But let's go ahead and use a preset. We'll start out with the NIK Collection and then we'll move into launching a preset from Photoshop. So I'm going to click OK. And let's just launch Color Effects Pro 5. And right now we're on our Filters menu. But let's come down here and click on our presets. And to launch a preset, you can go to all and you'll see all 39 presets, or you could click on like 25th anniversary. But let's just pick one just for the sake of picking one. Let's do a clarity bump. Let's click on clarity bump and you can see the clarity is really bumped up and that looks really nice. And then all we have to do to apply it is click apply, but we could come here and change any of these filters that we want. Like we can shut filters off. We can add other filters by coming up to the filter list and adding other filters here. We can make any adjustments we want. We can adjust their opacities. I'm just going to leave it just the way it is and click apply, and that'll send us right back into Photoshop because this video is getting kind of long. And you can see here's our clarity bump. Here's the before and here's the after. And don't forget, you always have the opacity here in Photoshop that you can work with. You can add a layer mask to this and just, mask it in or whatever you want to do, or take it away from certain areas. So that's the way I generally work, by the way. Now let's launch a preset from Photoshop. Let me go ahead and get rid of what we just did here. I'm just going to delete this layer. And now let's come over to the gear icon on the NIK Selective tool. And remember, in this section here, apply favorite filters, presets, and last edit. Right now it's set for NIK collection. We need to change this to apply in Photoshop. Now remember, this works for last edits, filters, or presets, any of those different scenarios. Let's click OK here. And now, any one of these filters, and you can see the ones with the little triangles on them, they have different adjustments. Like if I come to Analog Effects Pro right now and click this, you can see there's last edit and also some of my favorited presets. We can close this up, but let's come to Color Effects Pro 5 because it has a bunch of different filters in it. So let's click here, and you'll notice we have a list here, and it says filters and presets. Right now you're seeing filters and presets all combined. If I just want to see filters, I can click on presets and shut presets off. See, it grays out, and now you're just seeing my favorited filters. Those are the filters I put, clicked on the little star. They're your favorited filters, and they show up here. Okay, the only ones you can apply in Photoshop are favorited filters. Now, if I click filters, we only see last edit. But if I click presets, you can see all the presets that I favorited. Now, that even includes your own custom presets. Well, then let's go ahead and apply one. So for this image, let's try this one called Soft Landscape. Now, I'm going to click it, and watch what happens. It does not leave Photoshop. It's going to apply that preset right here in Photoshop. Now that may have several different filters attached to it. Okay, so that's kind of nice. But there it is. We never left Photoshop. Now the only thing is we couldn't alter the different filters because we didn't go into the NIK collection. But if you know you like a certain filter just the way it is and you don't feel you need to make alterations on it, then just launch it from Photoshop. And now we can see here is the before and here's the after. And don't forget, you can always throw a layer mask on here and just mask it in certain areas or take it off certain areas. You have all that flexibility. And again, all that holds true for a last edit as well. Say for instance, you added a nice effect in color effects and you want to apply it to another image, you can just open up another image and apply the last edit without ever leaving Photoshop. So that's really nice. But remember, to do that, you must have apply in Photoshop checked on. The last thing I'm going to cover is meta presets. So let's click this drop down triangle here, and you're going to see your meta presets in here. Okay, now these meta presets are created by NIK or DxO. They make these presets. Now, these presets are using two different NIK filters, for instance, and you can see these little, call them tokens or icons. Like this one called Expired Film is using Color Effects Pro 5 as well as Analog Effects Pro 3. So these tokens denote what they're using. Like this one's using Color Effects Pro 5 along with Silver Effects Pro. So that's how you can tell. But if you hover to the left of them, you'll see a little question mark comes up. If you click it, it'll tell you what this preset will do, or this meta preset will do. Okay, it creates an overall purple hue and a graduated fog effect for a landscape. This other one called Collapsia, if I'm saying that right, if I click it, says emulates a glamorous black and white rendering to enhance the beauty of the image. So let's try that one. But before I do, I'm going to show you something that may throw you. Let's click on this gear icon and go to settings. You'll notice I have this set to image composite. When you're using a meta preset, I'm going to leave this on image composite and click OK. Even though it's on image composite, it will not composite this. I don't know why. I think it should, but it doesn't. But that's maybe the way it's supposed to be. I don't know. but I'm going to run this Collapsia. But right now you'll notice my layer mask is highlighted. It will not run when the layer mask is highlighted. I must click on this actual pixel layer. And then when I click on Collapsia, it's going to start to render this out. Now, it doesn't leave Photoshop when it does this. It's doing it all right here inside of Photoshop. But remember, like I said, it will not make a composited layer. You'll see it goes right on that same layer. So that's kind of important. If you wanted to keep that layer intact, you would have had to, made a duplicate of that layer and then applied it to that. So bear that in mind. But there it is, but it does it right inside of Photoshop. Now, what if you wanted to be able to get in and alter the two different filters that it was using on it? Well, you can do that, but here's what you need to do. Let me go ahead and get rid of this layer right here, or let me back up a step. Let me go to my Photoshop history and click on Snapshot 2. I made a snapshot. So this is the state we were before I went in and applied that meta preset. I'm going to go ahead and copy this layer so I don't affect it. So I'm just going to do a Command or Control J to copy that layer. And now what I'm going to do is turn this into a smart object. So you have to turn this into a smart object to make separate adjustments on the two filters. So right click and just go to convert to a smart object. And now launch Collapsia again. And we'll give it a couple seconds here to go ahead and render itself out. And I'll show you what we can do at that point. And now you'll notice with our smart filters, we have Silver Effects Pro 3 as well as Color Effects Pro 5. So there's the two filters. Now we can go ahead and do everything you can to a smart filter or a smart object. So if we want to work on Color Effects Pro 5, double click right here and that'll open up Color Effects Pro 5. And it just tells us, warning, this plugin has identified that the active layer is a smart object and will now operate as a smart filter. The brush will be deactivated and the effect will be applied to the current layer. So we click OK. So now you'll notice in here we have a tone curve. But not only that, we have a bunch of other filters here. In other words, we have classical soft focus, we have cross balance, we have sunlight, we have film effects modern here, and we could go and change and alter any of these filters. We can shut filters off. We can again adjust any of them that we want to. For instance, let's shut off classical soft focus, and that gets rid of the soft focus. And how about sunlight? Let's get rid of sunlight here. I'll just make a couple alterations. And let me see, is there anything else I want to do here? Let's work with this contrast on the tone curve. Let's add more contrast here. Like this. We'll add a lot of contrast, and now we'll click apply, and now it'll update the smart filter. It's working, so give it a second or two here to finish, and now it's changed. So by double clicking that, I was able to change the entire look. Now I could double click Silver Effects Pro 3 and go and change that as well. So remember, if you want to work with meta presets, you must turn them in and make alterations to the actual filters that are attached to that meta preset. You must make it a smart object first. Well, there you go, everyone. That was a pretty deep dive. It was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be into working with the NIK Selective tool, working with meta presets, working with presets, and also really digging deep into the NIK Selective tool, which is a very powerful tool. And it can throw you if you don't really go over it. And so you may want to watch this video a couple times just to make sure you're getting everything. Hey, if you enjoyed the tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe and click that bell notification icon. That way, every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.